Yo, what's going on? We back, man, because the game is back. Got another clip from the game over on Evelyn Lozado's podcast with her daughter Shanice. And again, he's on this show talking about his relationship with Evelyn's daughter, who is the mother of his children. And before I talked about a very ridiculous statement that he made. If you haven't seen that video, go check that one out. Today, we're going to talk about some other statements that he was making that make me want to share them with you because there are some things that we definitely got to talk about how fatherhood is approached and looked at in our community. And, game is a great example of some of the things that we need to be on alert for. And this is not me beating up on the game. Like, I ain't got no disrespect for him or his the mother of his children, or none of that. I just look at this as a great example for us to talk about some of the things that need to be addressed in our community. And this is a great example. So without further ado, y'all, let's get into this clip from the game. Let's hear what he has to say.
Ever since my 40th birthday, I've been like one with God. You know what I'm saying? And I ain't like, I'm not saying like I'm Pastor Mace or TD Jakes or Kirk Franklin, but I'm doing pretty well with like my faith and where I'm at in life. And I haven't been to jail in a very long time.
Let me stop here and say that is good. That's awesome. Before we get into what he's going to say that I want to address, I want to say that that's good. The fact that this man has come to a place where, he's developing a relationship with God. He's getting close. Like he said, he ain't no pastor. He ain't no preacher, none of that. But he is taking his relationship with God serious, and he hasn't been to jail again. And that's a huge part of what I'm going to be talking about. So without further ado, let's get back into the clip.
Right.
What changed at 40?
Callie she hit an age where I start to think about walking her down the aisle one day and her being able to go through, the period stage and like go through those battle these emotions that it takes two parents to like really get a child through those times, especially when it's your daughter. Like my sons, I'm just being being honest. When Justice and Harlem were little, I didn't give a f. I was their dad. I wasn't apologetic about who I was. Yeah, I loved them, but like if I had to get something done in the streets, I was gonna do it. They have good mothers. I knew they was gonna be all right. My mother is like love her grandchildren. And
let me pause right here because this is what I want to talk about, man. Like, it's funny. I'm not going to say it's funny. I'm going to say it's interesting, but not a bad thing, that one of the things that was a catalyst to him maturing and taking fatherhood and his role as a father a lot more serious was his daughter beginning to, mature and come of age. And I think that that is admirable. And I understand that this was a moment for him to be transparent, where he talks about the approach that he took to fathering his sons. And I got to be honest, like, it's problematic, but again, this isn't to, like, call out the game and say that he's bad, because he even recognizes like that was him then, this is him now, and he's a different person and he's developing, he's grown. But there are a lot of men who are moving in this world right now the way that game was moving back then. They don't give a care about their sons. They don't give a care if they go to jail. They don't care about none of that. They don't care about nothing but themselves. They don't care about nothing but getting to that work, getting to that money, getting to that money, getting to that bag, getting to whatever matters to them other than their children. And that is not the way to move. That is absolutely detrimental to our culture and to our society. And I think that it needs to be addressed when we see this happening, right? Like, we understand, like, Game was somebody that was, in that life. And as a result, his sons, that they had to suffer with him not being present. And it's so interesting because he just says, hey, well, they had good mothers. The grandma loves them, and that's it. But that's one of the biggest issues that we see right now facing our community, is that men are being raised, or I should say boys are being raised by women as opposed to men. And this is no excuse, because it wasn't the fact that like this guy didn't want to have anything to do with his sons. That wasn't it at all. He was making personal decisions, which I'm sure he probably would say, it was out of survival. It was out of being able to provide. And he chose a way that would put him in a position where he had to run the risk of going to jail in order to do that. That is a whole nother bad decision. And that is one of the catalysts for what leads a lot of men to, unfortunately, be bad fathers. Like, I've seen these different documentaries and different shows where they show you people in jail or in prison, and one of the things that you see is like a lot of these men have children, and a lot of them care about their kids, and the things that they be having posted up on their wall is like pictures of their kids. They miss them, but like you're not present. So it's vitally important for us, especially as men, to make sure that before we even have a child, are we in the right mind space? Are we in a place where we are planning and we're intentional about what we are going to do once that child is here? Like it's easy for the most part, especially in today's society, to make a child. Like I mean, it's people out here doing the wildest stuff, like sliding in all over the place in all different types of people, letting it go. Like that's what Game was talking about in the last clip. If you ain't see that clip, go check it out. His philosophy is a philosophy that I'm sure a lot of men have. And unfortunately, I don't think all men have that philosophy, but there are men that have adopted the philosophy that Game talked about in the previous video I did, which is very reckless. So if you haven't seen that video, check it out. But yeah, man, I feel like we have to address this. This is not okay. Like sons need their father more than you know, more than they know, more than anyone knows. And I get it. It's good to have a mother and a grandmother and women that love that child, but there are things that those boys needed from their father at that time. And unfortunately, he wasn't there to provide it. But this isn't the end of the clip. So let's get back. Let's hear the rest of what he had to say. Let's go.
They have good mothers. I knew they was gonna be all right. My mother is like love her grandchildren, and so I'll be like, I like I'll go to jail for a little bit, and I wouldn't care. But that's the difference between being young and misguided versus being old, getting older and allowing wisdom to consume you.
Now I got to give him credit here. Like this is again why I say I'm not beating up on Game. Like he is giving you a before and an after of how he used to move and how he's moving today as a father. I still feel like there's definitely room for improvement just based on the fact that he still is in a place where he's having children with women who are not his wife, which that is a whole other can of worms and an issue in and of itself. But I can respect the fact that he's saying, "Hey, man, like I didn't know no better back then," and it it seems like that would be a okay excuse, but we got to be real. As men, we got to own it. We got to own that and just say like, "Hey, man, like I made a terrible decision. That was a terrible decision to not be present in the life of my sons." And you got to do everything that you can to try to make up for that. I truly believe because there are things that those boys needed and you need to provide as a father. But I can definitely respect the fact that he sees that he is making an adjustment now. And that's one of the things that life will teach us, those lessons.
So now I'm not gonna make the same mistakes, that I made when I was younger because I really absolutely adore watching my children grow. Ever since
And I think that's awesome, man. I think that it's vitally, vitally important, for men to be present in the lives of their children. And I can respect the fact that, Game recognizes that now. I just want to, do this video because men need to understand this before it's too late. Like, don't wait until you 40. Don't wait until, your kids are already grown or they're out of their teenage and their childhood and they're moving and navigating through life. They're adult and they're trying to figure things out, and now you want to pop up as dad when they needed you a lot earlier. So I think it's really important for us to recognize that we got to hold one another accountable. We got to be like, yo, that behavior is trash, and we got to address the other behaviors that lead to this. Like that goes back to being promiscuous, that goes back to hooking up with women and impregnating them even when they're not your wives. All of that is stems from it. Not just the fact that you're like, yo, whatever, I gotta go chase the bag, or you willing to risk jail in order to provide for your kids or your family or things of that nature. So it's one of those things where I just want every young man to know, don't move like this. Don't make these mistakes. And if you are a man who you notice that you're making these mistakes and your children are still young enough for you to correct it, correct the behavior. It is better for you to bite the bullet and, go figure it out in another way. If you're doing illegal things, like ditch that. Ditch that. That's going to take you away from your kids. Figure out a way. There, we live in a day and age right now. There are so many different ways for you to make money and not even have to do it in a traditional way or have to put yourself at risk of getting locked up. So if you want to be a father, you have to be intentional, you have to plan for it, and you have to be present in the life of your kids, man. This is something that, back in the day was prevalent. Yeah, mothers were, active role in their child's life, but man, it was the fathers that really brought those boys up and even those girls. So these are my thoughts on what Game had to share his experiences. I appreciate him for being as transparent as he was and allowing himself to essentially be a life lesson for others. I want to know what you think. Definitely let me know what your thoughts are on what Game had to say, what your thoughts are on, fatherhood and the way men approach it, the decisions that they make when they're young in regards to how they address fatherhood and, the shifts or the changes that they may, or in some cases may not make after they get older. We'd love to hear your thoughts. You can drop a comment if you like. I'm Jay. I'll catch you in the next one. And before you go, if you haven't watched the other clip that I did about the game, make sure you go and check that one out. I appreciate you, and I'll catch you in the next one. Stay blessed.